Got it. Got it. So, yeah, hello everyone. So, thank you for joining Women of Code event today. So, yeah, hi, Stephanie from Delaware. Okay, got it. So, today we have today we have Rishika here with us to tell us all about her transition to computer science. Can you all see my screen?
Khyati, you need to present your slides.
Got it.
There's a present button right on your right hand side top. Yeah, that's it.
Got it. Okay, so should we start or wait for some more people to join?
No, we are starting. Please go ahead and start.
I got it. So thanks a lot. So today's event's name is Transition to Computer Science Programming and Tech. And my name is Khyati Thapliyal, and I'm a track volunteer with WWCode, and I'm going to be moderating your event today. Hello. Our speaker for today's event will be Rishika. She's a graduate student. And she's a track lead at WWCode. So let's get to know more about Rishika. Got it.
Hi everyone, this is Rishika. I'll be going more into my introduction and background after we go over a few more slides about Women Who Code.
Yeah, got it. So let me just introduce her to you, all of you, real quick, okay? So Rishika is a master's student in computer science program at University of California, Santa Cruz. And she did a bachelor's in psychobiology, minoring in biomedical research at the University of California, Los Angeles. So while she was there, she developed a passion not only for medicine and healthcare, but also devoting her career towards the overall social good. So thanks a lot, Rishika, for that. Apart from that, Rishika is also passionate about the application of technology to improving individual lives, such as increased access to healthcare and the use of medical devices, or just to make softwares to enhance the quality of life. So yeah, so apart from Women of Code, Rishika is also very passionate about promoting and encouraging women in the tech field, along with being a Woman Who Code lead for Python track and a volunteer for 2 other tracks and many more. Yeah, and a very interesting fact, in her free time, she likes to kickbox, she likes to volunteer in community, hang out at the beach, and mainly explore local eateries. So yeah, that's quite interesting, Rishika. Okay, so moving on from that. So let me real quick go through the mission of Women of Code. So our mission is to inspire women to excel in technology careers, and create a community where women are not inhibited by the gender bias to come out in the tech industry. Our vision is to promote a world where women are representatives as technical executives, founders, VC, board members, and software engineers. And just an event that is open for all. So yeah, that'll be great. Our target is to have engineers with 2 or more years experience looking for support and resources to strengthen their influence and level up in their careers. So it does not only include engineers with 2 or more experience. So we wish to bring together every woman that wish to start their career in tech, or people who have working mothers who have resumed it, just open for anyone. So yeah, that's that. And mainly, let's go through the code of conduct for Women Who Code. So Women Who Code is an inclusive society dedicated to providing an empowering experience for who participates in or supports our community, regardless of gender, gender identity and expression, sexual orientation, ability, physical appearances, body size, race, ethnicity, age, religion, social economic status, caste, creed, political affiliation, or preferred programming languages. So yeah, so because we wish to have our events to inspire women to excel in technology careers. So we cannot really look into all of those things. And anyone who is there for this purpose is welcome. Also, we do not tolerate harassment of members in any form. Our code of conduct applies to all women who code events and online communities. So yeah, and Millie, let's get started. So Rishika, over to you.
All right, thanks, Khyati. So I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen with some slides that I have prepared. And before I actually get into the presentation, I am going to release a quick poll, just out of curiosity, to see, you know, where is everyone's background from, which kind of field you're coming from. So I've just launched the poll, and I'll wait maybe 20, 30 more seconds just to see once we get a few more people voting, and then just to see where everyone's background is. And yeah, what I mean by technical, that means you know, anything from the STEM field. Okay, it looks like we have majority of people have voted. So just to see, we see that, you know, there's actually a pretty good distribution of people between the non-technical and technical fields. So that's really interesting. I'll be releasing 2 more polls throughout my presentation, but that was just something just to see, you know, where is everyone sort of coming from. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And yeah, so thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Khyati, for the introduction. So I'll be talking about my transition to computer science, programming, and tech. And so again, hi, I'm Rishika Singh. You can find me this is my username on Slack if you are part of the Women Who Code Python community. I'm also part of a couple other tracks in Women Who Code, specifically Silicon Valley and data science. And that's my LinkedIn as well. And later on, we'll actually be sharing a feedback form that will include a link to these slides where you can actually, you know, you can go back and find me on LinkedIn, and I would love to connect with all of you. And so just for a quick agenda, keeping it very light, this is basically just some intro and background on myself, then talking about sort of my transition into the tech field, some resources that I have listed down, and then I kind of want to end with a discussion just to see, you know, where have all of you come from, if you have any questions for me, just some casual conversation. So for introduction and background. So a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Santa Barbara, California, which is Southern California, about an hour and a half north of Los Angeles. I did all of my schooling up until high school in Santa Barbara, and then I went to University of California, Los Angeles for my undergraduate degree. So I got my bachelor's in psychobiology, and then I minored in biomedical research. And when I sort of joined as an undergrad, I kind of had the mindset of getting into the medical field, specifically becoming a doctor. And so with that, I had quite a bit of pre-medical experience. So that included my undergraduate research. And I also worked with a lot of volunteer organizations. I volunteered at the local hospitals and clinics. And I also worked a lot of underserved communities. And through all of this, I kind of saw that, my main passion was around working with people, trying to find ways to improve their lives, and just really focusing on community and society. And then from there, I sort of brought that to a bigger sphere where I thought about, what is my career goal? And I realized that, with this mindset of working towards helping others and improving people's lives, there's many ways that I could achieve that. And it doesn't necessarily have to only be in working in the medical field as a medical professional, whether as a doctor or a nurse. So I decided that, my passions lied elsewhere. And I was trying to think, what are other ways that I could possibly apply the same career goal, but perhaps in an entirely different field. And so this is what kind of got me thinking to sort of making this transition. And from there, I, started to think about maybe what else could I possibly do with this career goal and this passion that I had. So in my high school, I was part of an engineering academy where we, as our capstone project in my senior year of high school, we actually built a robot from scratch. So that involved designing the robot, building it from scratch, programming it. I was focused on designing it, so I didn't necessarily get into the programming parts of it, but I would see my classmates working on programming, and found it to be really interesting. And I did have some very, high level exposure to programming, but nothing very in depth. And I'd never, taken a proper computer science class or anything like that, but it was something I was always very curious about. And I kind of let that curiosity drive me to considering computer science as another sort of path to shift towards. So obviously that's a very big transition because, even though it is still STEM, most of the classes that I took in my undergrad were chemistry and biology, and there was, some physics, but the math was very limited. The computer science, I didn't take any of those courses. But, I am always up for a challenge. And so I basically try to plan out, what could I do moving on from here, knowing that, okay, maybe this is the field that I want to consider. So from there, I started thinking about, how do I get started? So I actually had Python as my first language. And I chose this because I had friends who were, computer science majors, and they suggested, it might be good to start out with Python. So I took their advice, and I actually started out while I was working as a medical assistant, just, still finishing that up. At the same time, in the evenings, I would start just, doing some very, brush up on Python, very intro level. So there's actually this open courseware class that MIT offers from, old classes back in from the early 2000s, but basically it's completely open source, completely free. Anyone can access them. And they're actually linked a little bit later in the presentation if anyone is interested. So this was an introduction to programming and computer science using Python. That was the name of the class. And you could basically just go on the website, you can watch all the recorded lectures, you could access assignments and exams as well as programming assignments. And I would go through all of them and they would have the solutions. And I kind of just was very self-driven, and that's kind of how I was able to kind of get started off. And I think that's what really helped me to keep going, was that it did require a lot of driving myself forward and just keeping up that motivation to keep going. And then another set of courses that I sort of delved into were on Coursera and edX, which are both pretty popular websites that offer courses. All these courses are free, but you can pay some money to actually get an official certificate for the course if you would like. So for Coursera, I took an Intro to Machine Learning course. It's actually quite a famous course offered by Andrew Ng. He's a professor at Stanford. And so I highly recommend that. Again, this is also linked a little bit later in the presentation. And I chose this course because, machine learning is kind of this up and coming hot topic in software and in computer science. And I kind of wanted to know, I didn't know exactly what machine learning was. And so there's no better way to find out than just sort of taking a class on it and going through videos and doing assignments and actually getting my hands dirty and, programming and working on various machine learning projects. So that was a really great experience. And then the second website I used was edX, sort of the same thing, where they do have courses offered for free, but you can pay some extra money and get an official certificate for the course. And so I took Microsoft offered this course called just Intro to Data Structures and Algorithms. I don't think it's offered anymore, but there are some more courses now that are offered that are quite similar to it, and I've linked one of them a bit later in the presentation that's offered by Harvard, sort of just an intro to computer science. And then so once I sort of got this very high level exposure and I started programming in Python, I started understanding, you know, programming at first was kind of this black box where I didn't really understand what actually is going on. I would kind of see my friends coding, but I never really understood what they were doing. But now I kind of had this very high level understanding. And I kind of wanted to take it a little bit further to see, you know, in the real world, what kind of, how do you actually apply these technical skills? Because, you know, there's only so much you can do just with, you know, looking at videos online and reading through things. And so what I did was I started to go to company websites and looking at the descriptions for all these roles. So for a software development engineer, a software engineer, you know, even for data science and machine learning roles, just to see in the description, they kind of, you know, list out sort of the requirements, whether it's your education or previous experience, and also some like really important soft skills, which I realized is, you know, something that you can't exactly learn in a class. That's just something that you have to learn by experience and by doing. So that's with interacting with other people, talking with recruiters, and just working on your soft skills in that sense really does help. And then also a lot of companies host recruitment events. A lot of local universities also hold these sorts of recruitment events where companies will come and visit. And this is actually served to be quite helpful. And I'll go into this a little bit later. So with all that, then I started to think about, okay, so what is my end goal and how do I get there? So I knew that I wanted to do, given that I took that Coursera course in machine learning, I was really interested by, you know, all this like exciting new research that is going on in AI and machine learning. And after having gone through all of these role descriptions from companies, I saw that a lot of them did require, you know, a bachelor's degree in computer science or a related field. And my bachelor's degree was in psychobiology, which doesn't have much overlap with anything in computer science or engineering or even math. But you know, I could still find another way to still get a degree. So what I decided was that I would pursue a graduate degree, and I decided to go for a master's. And I believe that that would not only help me become, you know, competitive in the job field, but it would also help me, you know, get some formal education. And as a master's student, I would also be able to do my own research, you know, under a guided advisor. And from there is when I decided to, you know, look a little bit deeper into master's programs. So this was quite a task because I had to, you know, start out by researching all the programs, and what I looked for in programs was not only something that aligned with my research interests, but also, you know, the location and kind of what is the community like. And I was, you know, I've been born and raised in California, so I kind of wanted to stay in California if I could. And another really important thing was looking at, you know, typically they will list out kind of what are the prerequisites in terms of the coursework and other technical skills that are needed. So they don't necessarily require a lot of, you know, professional experience if you're pursuing a master's program, but they do want proof that, you know, you've taken certain courses such as in data structures and algorithms, linear algebra, other kinds of math classes, programming in different languages beyond just Python, you know, Java and C++. And, you know, some programs differ in exactly what kind of requirements they have. And so basically I just researched all of them, saw, you know, what is doable. And I kind of set myself about a 1.5 year time frame, that in that time I would take all of these courses and brush up on my technical skills. And that would make me, you know, a competitive enough candidate to apply to these programs. And then to actually get my degree. And so just, you know, from there, the next steps were to take all these required classes to apply, and then just, you know, fingers crossed and see what happens. So for my required classes, I actually took quite a few classes at both a local community college and the University of California in Santa Barbara. I took a discrete math class as well as a Python class at the university in Santa Barbara. And then at the community college, I took about 3 Python classes. I took 2 Java classes, 1 C++ class. So there was quite a few different languages that I covered. I didn't necessarily need all of those languages to apply to these programs, but I just wanted to see, what are these other languages like, because Python is quite different from Java, which is quite different from C++, and they all have their pros and cons, but it just allowed me to kind of get a more well-rounded view of what programming is and when do you use certain languages, and why it also showed me why it helped that I started out programming in Python, because it's a very nice high level programming language that kind of does a lot of things in the background. But when you jump to something like C++, you actually have to go and get your hands even dirtier and do a lot more things that when you look at Python, it kind of does a lot for you. So that's why I'm glad that I started out with Python, and then I went a little bit deeper into Java and C++. Yeah, so I took all those classes and I applied. And then also prior to finishing my applications, I did get some professional experience in the form of internships. So my first internship was as a data science intern at a company called Evidation Health, which is this local startup, healthcare startup in Santa Barbara itself. And the second one, which I did the summer after that, was as a software quality assurance intern at Internships Health, which is another company in Santa Barbara, and they focus on telemedicine. So both of these internships, while they are both, in the field of software development and engineering, they have a lot of similarities and a lot of differences. So focusing on the first internship as a data science intern, I had this dedicated project for the summer. I was working with comparing and doing heart rate analysis between two different medical devices. And it was a startup, so it was a bit more fast paced, but I also got to really hone in on all of my programming skills, especially with data science. So I worked a lot with Jupyter notebooks. I worked only in Python. I really learned a lot about the structuring data and flattening out data and data exploration, kind of cleaning through data, and all of these various things that really helped me to improve my programming skills. I had a lot of very close interactions with my mentor and fellow developers. So that's kind of what I really liked about this startup environment, was because you really got to spend a lot of time working on various different things. But I was able to successfully complete my project for the summer, and we were able to produce an abstract from the work that I did, and we actually were able to publish it and present it at a conference. So that was very exciting. And then for my second internship, which I did in the following summer, that was as a software quality assurance intern. And so this was obviously a different stage of the entire development pipeline. So towards the end, after all the code has been written out and it's been released, then we would go through and we had these massive testing plans to check for any bugs. And with that, I was able to not only learning about testing software and automation, but I also was able to interact with the developers that wrote the code to see, to better understand kind of their thought process and going through it. And so in that, I was able to sort of learn and be curious, and I would express to them, that I do have this interest in coding and this experience, and I would ask them to sort of explain to me their thought process and their logic and why they wrote a piece of code a certain way. And InTouch Health was a really nice company to work for. What they did was actually they built their own robots as well as their own software that would be on the robots and other devices. And this sort of interaction would allow patients in a hospital and then doctors from home or any other hospital to communicate. So a robot would physically be in the hospital, sort of on the patient side. And then they would sort of do this video and voice call to a doctor, and the doctor could be using their laptop or their iPad or their iPhone, things like that. So it was really interesting. And with both this internship and my other internship as a data science intern, I was able to bring in my undergraduate experience and knowledge of healthcare and medicine, not just in my classes, what I learned, but also with my pre-medical experiences that I had, being in hospitals physically. It was a really nice mix of technology and health. And it's something to this day that I'm really passionate about leveraging technology and really integrating the strengths of technology and what computer science can do and the power of data and how we can use that to develop novel technologies in healthcare to improve people's quality of life, whether that's in the form of things like the communications over robots or whether that's medical devices themselves. So I really took a lot of really valuable lessons from both of these internships. And what I learned from both of these was that, how important it is to collaborate, working in a team, working as a whole company, and really understanding every company's mission and what are their principles. And so from there, I completed both of these internships, and then I started my master's in computer science in September of last year. And so I have just finished my first year of the program, and I have one more year to go. And I have a concentration in artificial intelligence and machine learning. I've been able to to take several classes already. And I've also been working in a research lab, which focuses on statistical relational learning. And my principal investigator actually came up with her own programming language that helps to look at relational data. And my project right now is focusing on fairness in recommender systems. So it's actually pretty interesting. And so, yeah, so going from my progress, so I've completed year one, and so I'll be starting my second year of the program, second and final year. I'll be starting just beginning of next month. I also had an internship over the summer that I just completed this past week. That was at Amazon, specifically Amazon Web Services. This was as a solutions architect intern, which again is another different part of software development and engineering, and it's a lot more customer facing, but I had a really wonderful experience, and I took a lot of valuable lessons from that. And just if we're looking ahead, I'll be completing my program over the next year. I'm also involved in several on-campus organizations, along with Women Who Code, which has been a wonderful experience so far when I joined them back in March and April. I'm also involved in some student-led organizations on campus, which includes ACMW, which is the women's chapter for the Association for Computing Machinery, as well as the first all-female non-binary hackathon that's being hosted by students on campus. And then also Women in Science and Engineering, which is another organization where we try to promote and encourage women to join the STEM field. And so here are some resources that I had already mentioned a bit earlier in the presentation. So in the slides themselves, you can, these are all linked and you can access these courses. This edX course is not the exact one that I did, since that Microsoft course is no longer available, but this one is pretty similar, and it's quite popular. And along with Coursera and edX, there's also Udemy, which is also very highly recommended. Those courses, a good majority of them are, you do have to pay for them, but sometimes they're on like really amazing discounts. Some of them have been offered for free because of COVID. So I would highly recommend looking at that website as well. And then along with courses, there's a few other things that I would recommend as sort of, these resources. So the first is hackathons. And hackathons are, they are done by universities, and right now they're all being done virtually. But there are also some that, because of the times that we're living in with everything going virtual, there are actually quite a few hackathons that are actually more available and more accessible because they are online. So one that I had participated in this past fall was the MIT Grand Hack. So this was a hackathon started by MIT years ago, but they actually started the first one in San Francisco. So I was able to apply to that and get accepted. And this was kind of a non-traditional hackathon where it's not exactly where you're coding for 24 hours or 48 hours straight. You actually are trying to, you create your own problem statement about some social issue, and there can be healthcare related to it, medicine, whatever you want, but basically it has to be some social issue, so something that is affecting the local community or the local population. And you create that problem statement, and then you hack that yourself. So you actually create your own solution to it. And so the solution could be something that's like an app or a website, or it can also be something that's not as tangible. And so at the end, you kind of create this pitch presentation where you pitch your idea to people who are who could potentially actually fund your idea. And it was a really amazing experience. I interacted with people who are from all different kinds of fields, and they kind of encourage people that are not necessarily from coming from computer science or programming to actually be involved. So there's people from the social sciences, there's people who are medical professionals, there's people who or even like previous lawyers. There's like all different kinds of fields, and they actually highly encourage people to join that. So and they have now created multiple offshoots of this original MIT grant hack. So the original one typically happens in September or October. The San Francisco one started last year. There's also one, I believe, internationally in Europe. They had one dedicated specifically to COVID in India, I believe, a few months ago. So I would highly recommend looking into that. Secondly, there's online communities. So like Women Who Code, I'm so glad to be part of this community. I've had the chance to meet several wonderful people. Sadly, I can only, meet people right now, not really in person, but along with Women Who Code, there's other online communities and other sort of online chapters of things that you can join. And you not only get to connect with people virtually, but you also get to find out about their own experiences and just forming connections. And then lastly, are a few other resources. The first is Jumpstart, which is something that I have used because not only are jobs posted by companies themselves, but they also post their own webinars. And right now there's actually been like an increase in kind of what companies are doing to inform people about, what is it like to be a software engineer there, or what is the company culture like, because they're not actually able to meet people in person and make those connections in person. They're actually hosting even more events online. So I would highly recommend that. And then LinkedIn, obviously, I've been able to connect with people on LinkedIn, whether they're professionals in the field or if they're recruiters. You never know where a connection can lead you to. So I highly recommend that, and just leveraging your connections and forming a community. And sometimes I just like to go through my feed on LinkedIn because there's some really interesting articles that are shared, and you really get a whole breadth of things that you can read on LinkedIn. And so I think I have a couple polls that I want to release. So let me just go back here. And speaking of these resources, I just want to see if you guys have any resources that you've used. I'm just curious to see what kinds of resources you've used. So there's online classes, or just textbooks, or perhaps workshops and webinars, or anything else that doesn't necessarily fit into this field. Yeah, so I'll just let this go for a little bit so people get the chance to answer the poll. Okay. And yeah, I see a couple questions in the chat. So once I think I just have a couple more slides left, and then I'll go through the chat and address those. So, okay, so I think we have most of the answers. And as you can see from like these results, so, a big majority is online classes. And I think with sort of everything going virtual, I think online classes are obviously becoming even more popular. A lot of websites are offering discounts or even making them completely free. And I think that's just amazing because I really believe in accessibility to knowledge. And then textbooks and workshops and webinars, definitely. And then other. Okay, thanks everyone for voting in that poll. And then let me just sort of end with, so that was kind of my last slide, and now I kind of just have some time set aside for discussion. So I'm really curious to see, where everyone is coming from, whether it's a non-tech or a tech background. if anyone has any questions for me. So let me first go into the chat and I'll just address some of the questions that are already in there. So let me just scroll back a bit. And oh, that's amazing. I didn't know that CS50 course is being offered for free. Thank you so much for sharing that, Stephanie. Yeah, so please look into that. It's a really nice sort of first stepping stone into programming, and I think it's a really good resource. How do you decide to pay for the cert or not? How do you find the internships? So I think that's kind of it is kind of a tough decision to pay for the cert or not. So for Coursera, if I recall correctly, it's $99 for the certification. And I think the reason I decided to pay for it was because I wanted sort of to show on my my CV and my application when I was applying for master's programs that, you know, I've taken this course and I did well in it, and kind of just as like a proof or a verification of it. So I think it kind of depends on the topic itself and also kind of what is the main purpose behind you taking that course. You can also decide to sort of test out the course. I think people also have posted reviews on what kind of courses are good. That machine learning course from Coursera that I took is kind of like the machine learning course to take. It's taught by Andrew Ng, who's an amazing instructor. So if you're looking into getting into machine learning, I think it's a really great one. But if you're not really sure about paying for the certification, you can also just sort of start out by taking the course without paying, and then see if you're actually, you know, if you're kind of getting into it, if it's actually sort of fitting with what you're looking out from the course, and then just decide, you know, at a later point. And then for finding the internships, so I think right now there's a lot of like the online communities that I mentioned. A lot of them have sort of like newsletters that you can join that will send out like a job blast, and a lot of these are remote right now. So I think, you know, there's even more opportunities that are available for people. For myself, for the two internships that I found, the first one was actually was just I knew someone who worked at the company, so that does help a lot, because that's kind of like gets your foot in the door. And because they were such a small startup, they were kind of looking for interns just for the summer, because it's kind of a research-based company. So it kind of allowed them to get this research project off the ground, and I was able to complete it. And then for my second internship, I found that just through, I used, you know, pretty popular job websites like Indeed.com, there's ZipRecruiter, and even LinkedIn has LinkedIn Jobs, which I think are really, really great. And then if you go to Glassdoor, what you can do is actually, I'm pretty sure there's like a way you can put a filter on what kinds of jobs you're looking for, the location, maybe the experience that's required to apply, and you can kind of like set those filters, and then they can send you emails, and you can actually look through you know, lists and lists of jobs to see, you know, what actually matches up with what you're looking for. There's also some really great virtual conferences. So Grace Hopper Celebration, which happens later in October, or actually end of this month, which is, you know, encouraging women in tech. That's a really great conference. So obviously it's going to be virtual for this year. And they've reduced the price of the tickets, but you can also try to get scholarships to attend. And there's also Tapia, which is another conference, which is for underrepresented groups. So I'd highly recommend looking into those virtual conferences, because not only do you get to hear from really amazing keynote speakers and other sort of panels, but they have companies that actually will give interviews on the spot. And I have had friends who got internships and full-time jobs on the spot just joining at the conference. So I highly recommend those. And then let's see, some prerequisites for hackathons. So I wouldn't say there's that many prerequisites for the MIT Grand Hack that I joined. I remember the application wasn't very, it wasn't very demanding. I didn't really have to put in, you know, my GPA or anything like that. All I had to put was, you know, what sort of field am I coming from? So am I a student? Am I a working professional? Or, you know, something else? And then I think what they really look for is kind of what issue are you passionate about? Because they do have a few different categories of, 3 different tracks that when you join the hackathon, you're going to be placed into one of those based on your preferences. So you actually will specify, out of these tracks, which ones are you interested in and why? And then also, why do you want to, participate in a hackathon like this? So I think really understanding sort of what is the main goal behind this hackathon, why is this company or university doing the hackathon, and kind of making sure that you align with that and expressing it. I think that's really important. And then can you talk about how to apply for internships or how to qualify for them? So I think I spoke a little bit about how to apply for internships. I think just making use of all those websites that I mentioned and qualifying for them. I think a lot of them do have the requirements listed in terms of education or previous experience or any sort of other technical or soft skills. It also really helps to, if the company is doing a sort of info session or, meet the engineers or some kind of panel like that, which a lot of companies are doing right now because all the jobs are remote. So they can't exactly meet with people in person. So I would highly recommend doing that so that you can actually learn about the company a little bit more, make sure that it's something that you actually want to work for. And then you get to, after the event, make sure you note down the names of the engineers that were there or the recruiter perhaps, and you can send them a message on LinkedIn and try to connect with them. And that might help to get your foot in the door when it comes to actually applying. Okay, so please tell us more about machine learning. I have also done a few courses on machine learning and deep learning. I don't know what to do next. So prior to my master's program, I only took that one course on Coursera, just the intro to machine learning. And then in my master's program, I've taken a graduate level machine learning course and a graduate level artificial intelligence course. And I haven't done anything specifically in deep learning. I've kind of just read on things on my own, just with online tutorials. So I guess what to do next, I guess it would depend on maybe where your interests lie. Like if you want to do this professionally, maybe seeing what are kind of the companies that are doing this and what technologies are they using. Sometimes companies are using specific languages, so making sure that you're comfortable in those. And there's also in the Python track itself, we're going to be starting an Discover NLP with Python course just in a few weeks. So we're kind of going to be going on the ground up from just an intro to NLP, and then kind of how can you use NLP with deep learning. So if you want to attend that, feel free to. Also in the data science track, there's ongoing series in there about machine learning, so I'd highly recommend doing that. The next question, are you learning real world applications in your master's program or only theory? So I've been learning, I would say it's a good mix of both. I have been able to do many projects in all of my classes, and that's what I like about sort of this graduate program, is that you are learning more about the applications and actually, using all of this theoretical knowledge to do a project. So I think, you really get to learn in a different way when you're actually applying it. So in my artificial intelligence course, I actually worked to use CNNs, or convolutional neural networks, to help with image classification. And it was actually to classify someone's mood based on their EEG, which is just sort of this reading of their brain activity. So it was really interesting. And again, I kind of was able to bring in like my undergraduate knowledge and exposure to the brain and neuroscience. So I think that was a really cool application. And we kind of went beyond just, learning about the theory. Is it better to proceed with a self-taught model, or is a master's degree in CS a necessity to make a transition to coding? I don't think it's a necessity. I myself just decided to do that because I started out self-teaching myself, and then I decided that I kind of wanted that formal education and that structure. But I think if you're very, self-driven, and you can, some people are able to kind of continue with self-teaching and then get to a stage where they can, sort of transition into the professional field from there. I think that's really amazing. And I think it's definitely doable. I do have classmates that have been able to do that coming from a non-tech background. So I think it's more about kind of what kind of structure do you want, if we're able to kind of keep that drive going. And let's see, we can also apply for financial aid. Yes, you can definitely apply for financial aid, and they do offer those. I think that's really great that Coursera offers that. I'm curious if anyone, have you met other people in the industry who have entered the field without? So yeah, I actually have met one other person actually through my internship, and he's like currently like a manager, and he actually majored in psychology in his bachelor's, and you know, didn't have a formal master's degree or a graduate degree, and he's now a manager in, you know, solutions architecture. So I definitely think it's doable. I've met people who have done that. So, you know, I don't think it's a requirement to have a master's degree or to enter, you know, graduate education. That's just what I decided to do, and I think it's a very, you know, personal case-by-case decision. The name of the conference for underrepresented groups, that's called Tapia. That's TAPIA, I believe. So yeah, that's a really good conference. I think the applications are still open for this year, but I'm not too sure. I myself applied just a couple weeks ago, but I think it should still be open. Yeah, so the names of the conferences, yeah, so the first one was Grace Hacks. So, sorry, Grace Hopper. That's named after the very famous programmer. So that's GRACE, and then Hopper is HOPPER, and then it's GHC, so Grace Hopper Celebration. And I believe early registration has ended, but people are still able to still register, and it's a completely virtual conference this year, and I believe it starts end of the last week of September. And the website for Jumpstart, it's the name of the website is Jumpstart. So if you were to just go into Google and type Jumpstart, then it should be the first one of the first you know, results that comes up. And that's also kind of like, it works similarly to LinkedIn, where you can also find jobs on there. You can also send personal messages to people, and I think it's really great. So let's see. Yeah, thank you for sending those links in the chat. I didn't think to do that, but yeah, thank you so much for sharing those in the chat. Okay, so I think, let's see, if anyone has any more questions, I guess we can give it a couple more minutes. Okay, so for the PowerPoint, yeah, so the PowerPoint will be linked in a feedback form. And so actually when I complete my presentation here, Khyati is going to take over, and she's going to go through a few slides, and she'll kind of go through the process of a feedback form. And you can, in that form, which is a Google form, the link to my slides will be in there, so you can find the presentation there. Okay, so let's see, I see one more question. I'm transitioning into web development from a non-technical background. Okay, so I actually don't have like too much experience with HTML, CSS, or JavaScript, but I guess it would depend on like what kind of software, like what part of software development you're interested in. You know, beyond the traditional software engineering role, there's also sort of more specific to data science. There's also machine learning, there's quality assurance. There's also UI and UX, user experience, which is, you know, another very interesting field. And if you want to work more on like front end, where I definitely think that HTML and CSS will come in handy, because you guys get to actually like design, you know, what does the user see when they log into a website or they open the app, or if you want to go more into back end, and that would probably be, you know, be using languages more like, you know, Python or Java or C++. Let's see, what job would you recommend for front end? So I think, as far as I know, websites like, you know, like LinkedIn Jobs or Jumpstart, like I mentioned, or even, you know, Indeed and ZipRecruiter, which are quite popular here in the US. I think all of them you could still find front-end web development jobs. And I think traditionally the software engineering role is geared towards back-end development, but you can definitely filter it out however you want, and back-end and front-end always go hand in hand, so you can kind of do both. And let me see. Yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Khyati. There's also a front-end track. And okay, and I think someone's hand is raised. Sorry, I didn't catch that. But if you had a question or anything, please feel free to go ahead and share. Okay. I see one more question. Yeah, so if you want hands-on experience, I think something that's definitely a great place to start out is to pick a language that you're maybe already familiar with, or one that you want to learn. And then to get hands-on experience, I think it's you can just sort of get started on a personal project. So there's several project ideas already out there. And I think with a personal project, what's really nice is that you actually get to work on a problem that you're interested in, or perhaps you're passionate about. And a lot of these online courses that I mentioned are pretty project driven. So I think that's really great about them. And even with a lot of the series that Women Who Code, the Python track themselves and other tracks as well, a lot of these series are geared towards not only the theory part, but actually, getting hands-on experience and actually coding along with the person, and you get to sort of do it yourself. So I think that's something that's really unique about Women Who Code, what they offer. So I think that's a really great resource to use as well. Okay, so I think that's it for the questions that I see in the chat. So at this point, I'm going to switch back over to for Khyati to take over. Thank you so much. I guess we kind of already went through the questions. Please, if you would like to connect with me on LinkedIn, you can find my LinkedIn right there. And you also have access to these slides. And that's my username on Slack. So feel free to DM me with any questions. Thank you so much for everyone for joining. And I'll switch over to Khyati. Thank you, everyone. I think you're muted, Khyati.
Yeah, so we're good to go. Yeah, thanks a lot, Rishika, for such an awesome session. So personally, I learned a lot from that, being from the non-tech side, transition to tech. So yeah, thanks a lot for that. And thank you everyone for joining today. So you can get all the resources, access to the slides and everything. You just have to fill this feedback form. Sorry for that. You have to fill this feedback form and it'll direct you to the resources. So yeah, do let me know. Okay. So yeah, so let me know when you guys are done. So also check out our upcoming events, Beginners Python Study Group, that is on September 9 and September 23. So yeah, even that Rishika is gonna be helping out with. So yeah, so it's an awesome session. So they'll tell you about Python and how they make you learn it. So, and tell you all about the difficulties, give you all the resources. So yeah, that's there. And also our upcoming session that is about discovering neural networking programming with Python. And the session is on September 27th. So yeah, do join us there. So yeah, that'll be great. Ta-da! Yeah. And to stay connected with us and check our upcoming events, you can go to womenwhocode/python/events website. And the recording of our session will be uploaded soon. So you can, if you missed any point that Rishika mentioned or anything, any question that you might have, you can see the recording later. So this is a Python page, that is www.womenwhocode.com/Python. And also, as mentioned earlier, and as many of you had a question, so we have various Women Who Code tracks. So according to your need, you can register for any track that you might like. Also, do remember to register for Women Who Code Python track. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you. Got it? Great. So yeah, Rishika. So yeah, before ending, I would like to ask you some questions. If you're up for it.
Yeah, definitely.
Got it? So yeah. So lastly, to end the session, what's the best piece of advice to give someone who is thinking of making this transition from non-tech field?
Yeah, I think having gone through the experience myself, I think it's really easy to sort of get caught up in your head and get very overwhelmed just thinking about, how different this field is going to be and, not knowing what to expect. And I think just staying confident in yourself and just, believing in yourself and really, trusting that you can keep going and just keeping up that motivation. And something that's very common that happens even to people that are, in the tech field and haven't made this transition is something called imposter syndrome, where you kind of feel like you don't belong. You feel like you kind of have to constantly prove yourself and prove to everyone around you that you belong there. And I think just, staying grounded and keeping up your self-confidence, I think is really important.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. So one more. So what is the biggest lesson that you've learned since making this transition?
Yeah. So I guess it's kind of related to the whole self-confidence thing, but I think if you're trying to think of maybe like where your career is headed or what kind of company you want to work for, I think really finding that inner passion, like what exactly are you passionate about? Like, what do you want to do with learning this programming language or learning this piece of technology? Like, how do you want to see it to be used? So something that I've kind of kept with myself is that career goal of anything I'm doing is trying to improve society or doing something for like the overall social good. So anytime that I'm working on something as an internship project or whatever it might be, making sure that I'm kind of bringing it back to that original mission. And I think that's really important. And it's not necessarily like an easy thing to find that, but I think that's something that's really, really important.
Thanks a lot for that. I mean, for telling us really inspiring words. I mean, not only in the field of tech, we can apply it to anywhere. Like if you're in a transition to anything, like it's just confidence and yeah, that's great. So yeah, so I want to know, so what is a favorite experience or project that you've been part of?
Yeah, definitely. So I kind of spoke to this earlier, but it was in my artificial intelligence course where I actually used convolutional neural networks, which are a pretty important part of AI and deep learning. And it's mostly used for image classification. And we actually use that to classify people's mood on from their EEGs, which is like the brain signals. So basically from those recordings, can we classify their mood as basically a relaxed mood or like a heightened mood? So that was really cool because I got to sort of apply everything I learned in the class for this group project. I learned, I worked with my classmates. I think teamwork is really important. So I kind of took a lot of really valuable things from that whole experience.
Got it. So yeah, thanks a lot, Rishika, for such a motivational session. So yeah, that was great. So also I would like to thank everyone who attended our session today. It's been awesome coming here with you guys, asking questions, being so interactive. So yeah, thanks a lot for that. So yeah,
thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Khyati.
Thank you.
I'll just go ahead and end the session. Thank you so much, guys.